There's conversation starters if you need them. I've created like this app which kind of has some conversation starters and things. And it's a quiet environment. I deliberately find a quiet place to do this. Um, and yeah, that's it basically. It's very simple, nothing crazy, but it's a very simple event. Then we change partners two or three times throughout the night. And by the end, you've spoken to like, yeah, two or three new people in a quiet environment, encouraged to speak more deeply about things, not just the small talk. And yeah, people come away feeling really, really good.
Hello and welcome to episode 174 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we'll air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a review or a rating. That will mean a lot to me and help more people find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Tom Norman is the founder of Introvert Social Club, a project offering a refreshing alternative to the typical loud networking events and small talk. The typical loud networking events and small talk you have to endure to meet new people in your city. Tom is a community manager by trade with a passion and curiosity for humans. Originally from the UK, but now fortunate enough to call Valencia, Spain, his home. All right. Well, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, Tom. Tom, it's so great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
All right, Tom, we're going to get into the work that you're doing with the Introvert Social Club. But first, let's talk about your journey, as an introvert to now doing the work that you're doing.
Sure. I mean, I was always a very shy child. Like, I was typically on the outside of social situations looking in, and that was definitely a place I was a lot more comfortable with. And I think it was my teenage years really that I started to kind of like become less shy. I was still introverted for sure, but I was less shy, let's say. And I kind of learned, actually it was people pleasing. I learned how to please people, and that kind of made me more popular, let's say. And that kind of process kind of led me through to my 20s and stuff, and I had different various projects. Um, some of which, I wrote a book when I was, I think, 21, 22, a book about travel. And that ended up with me living in Slovenia, which is, tiny little country between Italy, Austria, that kind of part of the world. And yeah, basically, I ended up moving to a brand new city and building my life from scratch in a brand new city. And so I got to witness firsthand, what it's like being somewhere brand new and trying to build your life from scratch. And particularly as an introvert, it was difficult. So I did it once in Ljubljana, and then a few years later, this was 3 years ago now, I moved to Spain, and I did a very similar thing in Spain. I moved here with my girlfriend, and yeah, basically we had to build our life from scratch yet again. So it wasn't just the once I've done it, but twice I've kind of done this, building my life from scratch and realizing, you know what, there's lots of networking events and things. There's lots of language exchanges. There's lots of stuff going on, but I found a lot of it very difficult as an introvert. They're typically very loud. They're typically, a lot of networking, a lot of small talk, all of the stuff I really suck at. And so, yeah, basically, I think we'll probably come into it later, but I decided to create a club called Introvert Social Club, which was basically an experiment. I wanted to see, are there other people out there like me who want to meet and connect and chat in a lot less overwhelming ways? And apparently it resonated because now there are over, I think it's 1,200 people in the meetup group. There's a WhatsApp group alongside that, a community which I've just launched as well. So it turns out it resonates with a lot of people. And that's kind of, yeah, for me as well, I've had a lot of experience building communities. So one of the things I did in Slovenia was the same thing. And for me, I think this comes back to my childhood too. Like I said, as a child or as a teenager, I was very shy and was on the outside looking in. And I learned just how powerful it can be to feel like you're in the in crowd, if that makes sense, rather than being on the outside. So I think that's another one of the experiences that I had growing up, which made me realize and cherish just how important it is to build these, let's say, safe spaces. That word's kind of overused, but like these safe spaces, these safe environments for people to connect in more comfortable ways as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk a lot about that. So how did you learn the term introvert and then embrace it?
Honestly, that's a very good question. I have no idea when there was not a moment I was like, oh, maybe that's me. It's just
Okay.
something I think I kind of grew up knowing I was quiet. Like I said, knowing I was shy before. In fact, so shy that I remember one of my best friends was leaving my school to go to another school, and the teacher actually had to come up to me and have a little, a little word with me and say, "Hey, Tom, you do realize Matthew's going to a different school. Are you going to be okay?" So I was incredibly shy, and I think it must have been in my teenage years, I guess. Like I learned that there's such a thing as an introvert, but it's really I'd say it's really my twenties. I think school and everything gives you a structure, and you just fit into the structure. So I think it's really my twenties that I started to learn. Oh wait, I am this type of person. I'm quieter, and as a result, it impacts me in these certain ways in the workplace. So for example, I'd look at other people, in the workplace, or even in, for example, I think we spoke about this before, David. I was on a bus once. In fact, several times I'd be on a bus with people, and I'd notice like people just have these deep conversations for the entire bus journey, like backwards and forwards. And I almost looked with a certain jealousy. I was like, how on earth can you keep this consistent conversation going for like an hour and a half, 2 hour bus journey? So there's little hints that I'm not wired like that. I don't want these kind of ongoing conversations to the bus journeys and stuff. So yeah, I think it was my twenties really that I realized I'm, not like everybody else. I'm more introverted.
Okay. And of course, on this show, we talk about strengths and needs of introverts. What's a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
I would say mine ties in really nicely with the work I do with community and things. And I'd say that my strength would be kind of the empathy that comes with it. I don't know if it's unanimous for all introverts, but at least myself and several people I've met who are introverts, there's often like a real kind of deep empathy there as well. A lot of being able to feel a lot. And I think it definitely helps me. Just the other day, somebody was saying to me, "Oh, it's funny you organize events and community and stuff. Like, as an introvert, it's strange for you to be doing that kind of stuff." And I was like, "You make a good point. Like you don't necessarily naturally think of an introvert being like that, but for me, yeah, it takes my strength, which is this ability to feel really deeply, and that I can kind of like learn very quickly what people need and how they should kind of gather and what they want from a situation. And that's really helped me a lot to kind of develop these events, of which I've hosted, I think, over 100 or more over the past like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's probably, I was going to ask you about a myth next. That might be one. It's like, oh, an introvert can't organize events, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. No, it's honestly it's something which it does sound absurd sometimes when you think of like the stereotypical introvert trying to kind of bring people together. But honestly, I've found for me, not only has it been good, using my strength, which is my empathy, but the other thing which I recommend anybody out there who's curious about this kind of thing, I really recommend if you've got an idea for an event and it doesn't exist in your city or whatever, give it a go. Be the organizer because that alone, especially as an introvert, gives you a certain role to play, I guess. Like there's certain role to play, and that kind of helps increase my confidence. When I'm somewhere as an organizer and when I'm somewhere as an attendee, I'm way more confident as an organizer. So, as an introvert, it might sound strange to be doing events, but it really it kind of uses my strengths and it kind of makes me become more confident as a person as a result.
yeah. And I am not always planning events like you are, but I do a yearly event through my work, and I'm the chair of the event. I love it, and
Mm.
I'm using my introverted strengths to, plan and organize. I'm very analytical and strategic, and I'm using my thinking skills to make a great event and, trying to keep introverts in mind too.
Yeah,
And that's the thing too. We're not all the same. So there's definitely going to be some introverts that are more empathic like yourself and some more that are more analytical. And neither is good or bad, but the sameness there is that we're all turned inward more and your empathy is turned inward where extroverts empathy, they're more, they're focused more outward. And so you just got to get to know all your strengths. Is there another
absolutely.
myth about introversion that you want to bust?
The only other thing which comes to mind, um, and maybe it's not a common myth, but people often think that introverts don't have anything to say. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Like often, I've got an incredibly rich inner world and like there's so many things going on in my mind that, if I'm being quiet in a situation, maybe it's more talking about the situation, like maybe the other voices are too loud that I don't feel like I've got a place to say. And one of the things I really dislike is fighting to be heard. So, if people are either crazy extroverted or crazy charismatic and there's no pauses in between stuff, I just back out. And it's not because I don't have anything to say. In fact, quite often I really do. So I think that's a myth that often we do have a lot to say, and actually we're just looking for those perfect moments, those perfect opportunities, those perfect collaborations, I guess, like connections with the right people, with the right crowds. And yeah, I think, again, I don't want to keep coming back to it, but I think that's one of the reasons why I love doing these events so much, is because it is building these spaces where people can feel like they can be themselves. They can feel like they can have their things to say with each other, by creating these safe spaces to be heard, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And as you said, you have a rich imagination. So you're always thinking. So of course you have a lot to say. We're always thinking. I know for me, it's nonstop. And so, yeah, we have a lot to say, but a lot of times we are putting our thoughts together carefully, and we're not thinking out loud like an extrovert would. We're thinking and then speaking. And so we're not going to use as many words, but there's a lot going on in our minds.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right as well. What you just said about, trying to figure out the right words to say it. I think that's a very interesting perspective too. Because, in my mind, often things are a lot more fluid, it makes a lot more sense in my mind. And as soon as I start to try and put it out into the wild, let's say, that's when I sometimes have struggle. Like it's like when it hits the air, it kind of slows down and changes form and everything. And yeah, I think I don't know if it's an introvert thing or if it's a me thing, but that alone, like in my mind, it's so much easier to kind of come up with these thoughts and ideas. And as soon as I start to express them, they don't quite come out how I want them to come out. And as a result, yeah, that's something I have to deal with every day.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely are forming our thoughts more perfectly, and it can be a struggle. And it's often why we need to prepare for things, because
Exactly.
and we can't prepare for everything, but we need to, give our thoughts before the meeting or before the event. Think about the things that we want to share and say.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about the Introvert Social Club and what led you to form that.
Yeah, I mean, the formation was a little bit like I mentioned, where I was here in Spain. It was my first 6 months, and I wasn't inspired by any of the other events I'd been to. I tried these language exchanges, which are, they sound trying to learn Spanish, let's say, and talk in different languages. And I'd been to like these networking events, and honestly, I'd always come away feeling incredibly drained, and quite often like a bit self-loathing too, like, oh, I'm so quiet, why can't I feel like I could fit in these places? um and like it led me to try to create something. And this wasn't new. I've created events in the past from different places. I worked in a place in Slovenia where I was creating events for them, so creating events wasn't new for me. But creating this introvert event, the idea just came from, I need this, and I want to see if anybody else needs this too. And like I said, it resonated. I think the first few were maybe just 6 or 8 people coming. And very quickly, the wait list was overflowing. And we're talking, at one point, I think the busiest ever wait list, because, I keep the event deliberately small. It's maximum 15 people because, beyond that, I start to feel overwhelmed, let alone people kind of coming for the first time and stuff. So there's always a wait list. And I think the biggest ever wait list was like 60 people wanting to come to the event. That means 15 were on the event, 60 wanted to come. So it really kind of snowballed a little bit. And yeah, that today it's an event which I host every week. And it's essentially, yeah, like I said, a group of 15 of us. We come together and I break everyone into pairs or small groups, usually 2 or 3 people per group. And we have about 25 minutes with each pair. And it's basically just a place where you can ditch small talk if you want. There's conversation starters if you need them. I've created like this app which kind of has some conversation starters and things. And it's a quiet environment. I deliberately find a quiet place to do this. And yeah, that's it basically. It's very simple, nothing crazy, but it's a very simple event. Then we change partners 2 or 3 times throughout the night. And by the end, you've spoken to like, yeah, 2 or 3 new people in a quiet environment, encouraged to speak more deeply about things, not just the small talk. And yeah, people come away feeling really, really good about themselves from what I've heard. And so since then, I've also been expanding into a few other events recently. Yeah, recently. But that's kind of the core flagship event, if you like, and how it formed.
You said a couple things there. You said right now, you said people go away feeling good about themselves. And earlier you said, there was events that you attended that there was self-loathing. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I've experienced that too. It's like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just easily interact in this situation? So what you're doing, people should walk away from that event, you know, having had a rich experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, just last week, something which really warmed my heart. It's not like any person, I have my doubts sometimes. I'm like, what am I doing? Is it any good? Da, da, da. And just last week at an event, some guy confessed to me. He's a 55-year-old guy. He's single. He's in Valencia for quite a few years, but he's still trying to find his crowd, and he's also introverted, obviously. Um, and he said to me, "Look, Tom, before these events, I didn't go out very much to connect with people. I was feeling quite alone." And he said, I thank you so much for what you've done because you've built me this way to meet people in a format which works for me." And it really struck me hard. Like I was like, like I said, I doubt myself sometimes. And to hear that from somebody, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much." And he's a regular. He comes, every couple of weeks at least. To hear that was really, really heartwarming to know that it's having a positive impact on people.
Yeah. How do they find you?
You know what? At the moment, it's been mostly through Meetup. Depending on the city, Meetup can be either, popular or, dead. But Valencia, it's working pretty well. And there's a lot of people on Meetup. So it's been Meetup up until now. I am trying to take into a bit of marketing myself, doing some guest posts here and there for like local places. Also some like in-person things too. Like I'm going to drop some flyers and stickers around. So I'm going to do a bit of in-person, a bit of online. But yeah, no, Meetup's been probably 90%, 85% of people so far has discovered the event through Meetup.
And how can we make events in general more introvert friendly, whether it be the Introvert Social Club or some other event? How can we keep introverts in mind?
Sure. I mean, one thing you mentioned earlier, I think is really important. And that was, we like to plan a little bit, if you like. So it's very important that you let people know what to expect from an event. And it doesn't mean everything has to become spoiled in advance, but people should know like what kind of setting is it, what kind of interactions are they expected to have. So there should be a little bit of for planning, let's say, of what's going to come. And then the location itself and the way it's organized also is really important to be introvert friendly. So, for example, like I said, the events that I host, I try as best as possible to find locations which are quiet because there's nothing worse than trying to shout at each other, barely able to hear each other. And I get completely drained in this situation. And also, I'm not sure if it's an introvert trait or not, but I often get quite distracted if there's lots of voices too. Like I can't focus so much on just the one person in front of me. If there's lots of voices, maybe it's a highly sensitive thing. I'm not sure, but I get very distracted easily. So it's building situations in places where, yeah, it's quiet, and also think about the actual interactions people have themselves. Like it is very difficult without moderation to participate in a big group as an introvert. In certain moderation settings, for example, one event I host is about 10, 12 people at a time, but I'm the moderator there, and I do try to, as best as possible, use my empathy, use my everything to kind of give everyone a chance to speak. But in general, the bigger the group, the more difficult it is for introverts. So kind of sculpting these smaller groups, or at least these activities which allow you to kind of participate, in smaller groups. That's the real key here. Is kind of making it so that introverts can participate without being kind of overwhelmed by the situation.
Yeah, the very first thing you said there, telling people what to expect, that can really take the anxiety out of the situation, because sometimes I think introverts are more prone to overthinking. I may be
Absolutely.
wrong, but we spend a lot of time in our heads, and I think that just knowing what to expect can really and how to prepare can really make a difference in feeling comfortable.
Definitely. I mean, it's just, I use a silly example. Like sometimes I have a particular friend who often invites me out with some of his friends. And I always kind of try to ask, like, how many people are there, and what's the plan? Because I also don't like that anticipation of the being a huge crowd in a busy place. So even for like personal life and social events, I want to know what's coming and who's going to be there before I say yes, I'm coming or no. And it's the same with events, like it is intimidating, and this introversion itself is a spectrum, and especially if you're closer to the shy scale, like I used to be. I used to be incredibly shy, like I said. If you're closer to that, it takes even more effort and probably even more overthinking just to get yourself at the event. So you're really trying to make people feel as safe as possible before they even enter the door is really key. And there's a few other little tips, let's say, you know, giving people the opportunity to arrive a little bit earlier if possible. Quite often we like to scope the place out first, even kind of go up and scope the organizer out, even like before it gets busy and loud, before it becomes intimidating. Sometimes getting in there early and kind of scoping out, so giving people the opportunity to do that. And even I can't remember if I wrote this somewhere, if it's something I came up with, but even like these end of event kind of feedback and surveys, like we don't necessarily like to do it straight away. If you say if I say to you, "Oh, how was the event? Give me some feedback," an introvert won't necessarily like to do that straight away. So it's kind of knowing when to send surveys out so they've had enough time to digest what happened, to kind of come up with their own responses. So all these little kind of like little bits and pieces you can do to kind of make your events in general more introvert friendly.
Yeah, yeah, we tend to think about things, and we might not give feedback right on the spot. We might just need some time to process it
Exactly.
and process our thoughts. So you also talked about that it can be hard to get to know somebody in a loud space. I know I was at an event recently, and I like to make new connections, or deepen, talk with somebody I met before, but deepen that relationship or connection. But man, if it's loud, it's so tough. It's so tough for me, especially as an introvert, to be able to connect with that person. So how do you deal with that? How do you make a quieter environment for your events?
Yeah, I mean, part of it really is just like the physical location has to be quiet. Like, I did one event last week, a brand new event, and it wasn't particularly quiet. And I remember halfway through thinking, oh crap, this was not the right place to kind of do the event. And I've changed the location for next time. So actual physical environment is key. But even the layout of how you organize events is important. Like for example, for the Introvert Social Club, quite often, as much as I can, I'll try to distribute the tables around a little bit so that you don't have your neighbor right next to you, and you've got like, a zone where it's just you and your partner, let's say, or you and your small group, and you are away from everyone else. So it can be a lot more, a lot less background noise, a lot less kind of other conversations to zone out, let's say. And yeah, just quieter places in general, is what I kind of aim for.
So typically, what is the small group look like? How many people is that?
Usually two or three. And like I said, they can, and people start to use the conversation starters a bit more, which that also helps sometimes. Like especially particularly if I'm feeling drained, I don't want to kind of come up with a conversation. So having this kind of activity there, like these conversation starters, are kind of thoughtful questions that kind of gives you what do you call it, like a place to leap from, basically. So you've got like these conversations can start for you. You just answer these questions, and they're kind of thoughtful questions too. So it really does. As as an introvert, I don't like small talk. So you get to skip all the small talk nasty stuff and jump straight into like the deeper stuff, which and this is a thing. I'm not sure if this is like for you, David, as well, but I don't truly feel like I've connected with somebody unless we've gone a little bit deep. Like if I've, spoken to somebody, it's only been very, very small talk. There's nothing wrong with small talk, it has its place, but I don't feel like I've truly connected with you unless I've, I guess spoken deeply. It doesn't have to be like super vulnerable, it doesn't have to be super philosophical, but something real. And it's very difficult to define what that is. But yeah, I've definitely felt it before where unless I've had this depth of our conversation, I don't feel like we're connected.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've definitely gotten better at small talk. It's still not my goal to stay there. It can be needed to get to the deeper conversations we want to have. So how does it work? Someone comes to the event and there's conversation starters on the table, or how does that all work?
Yeah, like people show up. Typically it's staggered, people will arrive at
Yeah,
different
of
times.
course.
But let's say more or less, I get people in pairs as soon as possible. So sometimes I do an introduction, give the people the idea of the project in general, and the mission as well, like trying to give people the perspective of why they're here. And then we get put into pairs fairly quickly. Usually pairs. I usually only do threes if there's like an odd number or something. Um, and basically that's it. Like kind of people have free reign to discuss whatever they want. But like I said, generally speaking, people tend to go towards the deeper stuff more quickly, and they've got permission to. And then every 25 minutes or so we change partners, and it's about 3 times throughout the night that we do that. And then the one thing I've introduced with time was a bit of time at the end just to mingle. Okay, before it was kind of a quick finish. Okay, thanks guys for coming. Da, da, da. But having this like 30 minutes at the end, so that if you're too tired, you've got permission to leave already if you want. If you're socially drained, you can leave. There's no problem. But if you want to keep mingling, if there's somebody you really connected with and want to exchange more details with them, if there's somebody who looked interesting, who wanted to connect with, they've got a bit of like free time there to kind of like connect if they want. And then really we wrap up the event probably after, I think it's 2 hours in general. The event's fully wrapped up. And people can go their separate ways. And the other thing, like I said, I've introduced a new online community recently, and really the purpose of this was twofold. Like on the one hand, providing a way for people to connect after the events. Maybe you didn't remember to exchange WhatsApp, or maybe there's somebody who wanted to speak to you but didn't. This gives you a place where you can find them and connect after the event. And the other side of it is like I'm trying to build up these really these member profiles where it's kind of a really deep profile too. Like, I like deep. I'm talking about deep a lot, but like, rather than just, age, name, whatever, it's like a lot of questions which really allow you to express, I guess, not just things about you, but your values too, your philosophies, your interests, and things like that. And my hope is that this also becomes, a place to find people who you connect with in Valencia. And, eventually beyond Valencia too. But the goal, I haven't quite mentioned it in this format already, but the goal really is I know how difficult it is as an introvert to come to a new city and to find your crowd. And the way I think about it is, let's say the magic number is 30 people. Let's say anyone who comes to a new city has to meet 30 people before you find your person, your people, okay? As an extrovert, maybe you can do that in a month. You could go out every night. Let's say in a month you've met, 30 people, and your 30th person was, okay, wow, we've connected, perfect. As an introvert, as you know yourself, there's no way I'm not going out every single night of a month. So if I'm going out once or twice a month, that could take me, a year or more potentially to kind of meet my person, let's say. Not only that, but there's like less places for me to meet people because a lot of them are extrovert friendly, loud, or whatever. And so really the goal of this entire project is to hopefully reduce that number as much as possible. Rather than 30 people, building spaces where you can go and meet people more quickly, whether it's online or in person, so that you can find your crowd as an introvert in a new city as quickly as possible, basically.
So do the in-person and online go together, or are they separate?
Yeah, they go together. Like the idea is the people you're connecting with, the profiles you see online are the people also in your city. So they go together hand in hand.
Okay, so it's the same people attending the in-person event that's also online.
Exactly. And so, I'm doing it. It's not easily scalable if you're trying to build them up side by side, but the plan is to kind of like one place at a time, build the offline and online kind of together as well. And that's the goal eventually.
So you're looking to expand to other places?
Absolutely. Like if people listening in, as introverts listening in, if you've moved to a new city recently, and you are also struggling to meet people or fed up of the loud networking events in your city, check out my website, reach out to me directly or something, because we are looking to expand to different places. And it is, like I said earlier, as an introvert person who's organizing events, it's also quite a great role to play. It really does, like I said, boost your confidence, and also it just helps you get more connected too. Like when you are the organizer, people immediately have more of an interest in you somehow, and it does allow you to kind of build your network quicker. So if anyone is listening and you are that person in a new city and wanting to build a network, a genuine network whilst doing something cool, reach out or hit up my website.
Very nice, very nice. And so are people building friendships and making connections through your club?
I hope so. It's got really high reviews. I think it's, something like 75-star reviews on Meetup or something like that. I do surveys really regularly, and they're coming up with, good reviews and sometimes feedback about, how to improve things. Often it's like, oh, we really like this location, or this one was a bit loud, or something like that. So, try and make it as good as possible. And from what I hear anecdotally, people are enjoying it. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with how it's been going so far. And yeah, I hope it continues in this direction.
So, definitely we're both about it's creating introvert friendly events. But have you learned some skills to navigate the non-introvert uh, friendly events as an introvert? Have you learned to navigate those a little bit better?
I would say, first of all, be kind to yourself because, like I said, I wasn't particularly kind. I'd come away quite self-loathing, like, oh, why am I rubbish? Da, 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 da. No, it's okay. Be kind to yourself. Just because this event sucks and you don't connect so easily, it's okay. It's nothing, it's not a reflection of you. If possible, and you don't always have this choice, but I would also say, giving yourself that space before the event to kind of prepare mentally and everything, kind of get into a good frame of mind, a good mood, and if possible, even decompress afterwards, before you get home, before you kind of get to the next thing, have a little bit of space there to just decompress. And, maybe you are feeling anxious or self-loathing even afterwards. So give yourself that space to kind of adjust back to normality again. And I would say, the other thing is even the big, loud networking events, there's probably some other people there who you can connect with. It's just like, how do you find them? So typically, I would always look for somebody also like me, like looking down at their shoes in a corner or something and try to target them because maybe they're also introverted. We're just trying to find that person, the needle in the haystack, the person you're likely to connect with in this busy chaos otherwise. But yeah, I try to avoid them most of the time, especially the really, really it's not even so much I can function sometimes at networking events where it's trying to socialize, but it's just the loudness sometimes. If the place is exceptionally loud, I suck. So yeah, I try to avoid the really loud places.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing too. It's like, yeah, let's design introvert friendly events, but also know how to navigate as an introvert all situations and that kind of
Absolutely.
thing. And
And the other thing is, sorry, I was going to say, the other thing is, events is only one way to meet people if in a new city. The other way, and this kind of maybe isn't common sense, like activities, like hobbies and things, like especially choosing those which are maybe, in smaller groups, maybe chess club, maybe book club, or maybe, I don't know, climbing or bouldering or something. These are maybe places where you go in slightly smaller groups. The good thing is there's an activity to kind of be doing as well. So you don't have to constantly make conversation. There's actually something to do, and you kind of make conversations on the side. So there are other ways beyond just events to meet people if you're in a new city.
yeah, that's great advice. Find common interests. That's
Exactly.
and a lot of times you're going to have some deep conversations about those common interests, right?
Yeah.
So in general, Tom, how do you manage your energy as an introvert?
Sometimes not as well as I should.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do let my sometimes I do push myself too hard. I need like a few days to recuperate. But in general, one of my sacred parts of the day is the first, let's say, hour of my day. I get up at 6:30 every single day. And I have a bit of time to myself to drink a coffee. In fact, this year I've been kind of learning to code. So typically I'll just have a bit of time on my laptop, journal a little bit, learn to code a little bit. And it's kind of like my sacred time where there's no expectations, there's no other people or distractions. And honestly, I feel without that, I do feel a lot, I struggle a lot more during the day. I feel myself a little bit more anxious. I find myself, just, I guess anxious is the best word for it. So yeah, cutting out that sacred time is important. And I'm getting better at communicating when I need time beyond that too. I live with my girlfriend, I live with a partner, and in the past, when we first started dating, it was tough because I feel bad about saying, oh, I need some time to myself. You shouldn't say things like this to your partner. But no, like with time, you realize if I don't have this time, I'm not going to be a great partner because I'm not going to be I'm not going to be in the right frame of mind or anything to be there for you. So give me some time to myself, my own activities, even just reading, sitting on the couch with a book or something. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the two ways I manage my energy the most.
Yeah, and sometimes we do have to have those conversations. It's like I love you, but in order for me to be my best for you and me, I need a little space here and there. And
Exactly.
sometimes people can take that personally, but once they get to know, hey, you know what, I just need a little time. I tell the story like, I was going into work every day before the pandemic, and then all of a sudden I'm working from home all the time.
Mm,
And I realized, I didn't love driving and paying for gas and all that stuff, but that time driving home was some time to just unwind. And when I was only working from home, I had to figure out how to replace that. And it's
mm.
like, I love my family, but I would tell my wife, okay, I'm gonna drive home now, even though it was just walking from my home office to my bedroom, to the recliner and relaxing before I, went and had dinner and engaged with the family and things like that.
That's so interesting. I had a very similar experience. Like I was working remotely before as well. And it's the same thing. Like sometimes I'd finish and my girlfriend would start talking to me immediately. And I was like, wait, no, I need a little bit of time just to decompress.
Yeah,
But yeah, I love that. Like the virtual drive from home. I didn't
yeah,
think like that.
yeah. That's a good way to phrase it. Tom, you're doing great work with this Introvert Social Club. If I'm ever in Spain, maybe I'll check it out.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about it?
No, I mean, basically, I really would keep that as an open invitation. Like, if people listening in are interested in creating it, I am looking to expand. So keep in touch. Give me an email. My website is introverts-social.club. Bit of a mouthful, but that's the name. But I think that's the biggest thing. Like for me, whether it's for introverts or whether it's for people in general, building places to help people to connect has always been very important to me. And like I said, maybe it's come from my childhood, maybe it's come from being on the outside and wanting to know what it's like on the inside. So I'd say, whether you create an introvert social club or whether you're organizing your own events about something else, think about that. Keep that in mind because people, especially in this day and age, we want to belong somewhere. We want to belong to something. And we want to feel like we're, inside of something. And it's really important to do that. So as the organizer, you've got a huge responsibility to help make these spaces for people to connect, people to to find each other. But I think that's pretty hard to leave it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We all need to connect. We all need to belong. It's just the needs for introverts are different and often not acknowledged and often even ridiculed, but
Absolutely.
we need to connect and it can be in a different way. And so again, thanks for your great work and thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real blast, and I look forward to talking soon.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to further connecting with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media channels. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. If you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there's now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the 4-letter Myers-Briggs code, and you can also have the option of purchasing the full report if you'd like to learn more. I'll add a link to the show notes. So many great things about being an introvert, and we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.